Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is on his way to the United States and will be there around lunchtime today. He will discuss the all-important AUKUS submarine deal, amongst other things. And with that, let's head to California and live to Professor of Political Science at Cypress College, Peter Mathews. Peter, a big few days for our two countries.
Yes, indeed. All three countries in AUKUS, and they're going to be discussing specifically the submarine deal, which was agreed to earlier, and whether or not what kind of technology can be transferred over. In fact, they're going to be doing that, and who will build the submarines themselves, nuclear-powered submarines in the future, looking at 2040 delivery time, 2040 a few years from now, and the transition period will be discussed as well. And the question is, can the U.S. transfer technologies such as AI? Because there's some rules and regulations about that. They're going to work that out in some way or the other so that Australia will probably be able to use these submarines in the alliance.
The balance of power in the Pacific has always been so important to the United States and continues to be.
Absolutely. The United States is just as much a Pacific nation as an Atlantic nation, and it's been that way since the beginning of its time. And so to have strong allies in the Pacific are important. At the same time, to work things out with the biggest power in that area, which is China, that has to be accommodated in its growing strength to some extent without it being domineering and taking over areas of the world in the Pacific. Instead, accommodating and somehow adjusting to it at the same time that the Western nations will stand up for our own way of life, our own liberal democracy, for example, and that's very important.
Donald Trump, let's head domestically to the United States. Speaking at a Conservative political conference now, this was a number of days ago now, the former president said the Republican Party had been run by freaks and fools and claimed he was the only presidential candidate who could prevent World War III. Very Donald Trump-like.
Unbelievable. When you think about it, you know, it's like well, anyway, let's just say that the definition of conservative, speaking of the conference, has been completely departed from. Edmund Burke, the great English philosopher, said that conservatives believe that we should conserve or preserve the best of past tradition and use those traditions to guide us in the present and in the future. I don't think Trump has been doing that at all, and neither has the current day Republican Party led by him. So it's the moderate Republicans who adhere to that type of philosophy. We need them to come back into the dominance in the party, and that wasn't seen at CPAC at all. In fact, some of the other candidates were not even invited to come there. They didn't want to go there anyway.
What do you think his chances of being back in the White House, Peter?
I think that he possibly could win the nomination. It also depends on the indictments coming down, possibly, which he'll have to stand trial while he's campaigning. That could hurt him from even winning the nomination. But his chance of winning the White House, to me, is negligible. It's very low. And I don't want to put a percent on it right now because you can't gamble against Donald Trump at this point. But I don't think he has much of a chance of winning the White House next time around. But Democrats and others cannot be complacent about it. The Republicans who are opposing him have to come together and come up with a platform that would work for most of the voters in the primaries, for example. And eventually in the general election, the voters of the country have to accept the platform of either party.
Let's talk about the US economy. And Joe Biden has said there'll be big tax hikes over the next decade. Still big concern about inflation, some comments during the week, and that affected the market here as well.
Yes, here's something interesting, though. Biden's tax increases are targeted toward billionaires, especially, and also corporations that have been basically trying to avoid paying taxes and doing a good job of it over the years. In fact, President Trump gave the corporations a big tax cut down to 21% from 30-something%, and Biden wants to go up to 28% on them and bring some more money in for deficit reduction. So he's not only going to tax the wealthiest segments of our society, which I think can afford to pay a bit more, but it's going to use that money for deficit reduction, about $300 billion per year for 10 years, a $3 trillion deficit reduction package, but also investment in electric cars and new technologies, new jobs, all kinds of things, that infrastructure rebuilding, once again, a sort of a new deal. But to make it a balanced approach where the tax increases don't just go to only massive spending, but also deficit reduction and investments in the economy itself.
What about New York City, pressuring the Biden administration to help it deal with increasing number of migrants, which has overwhelmed their homeless shelter system?
Absolutely, and many of these governors have been sending migrants over there to New York City, putting them on airplanes and flying them over there, I think in a very strange way, but it's really hurting that. But also there are legitimate people who are asylum seekers who come to the United States legally and have to be allowed to come in and to be hearing their case for asylum as international law, to which we are party, requires. And so, yes, migrants, who want to put them in a category like that, there are a lot of them these days, and in New York City, and it is overwhelming. The homelessness, people who are homeless, their shelters that they're using for that. We need a comprehensive approach, Tim, toward the homelessness situation. We need a housing first program like they have in Utah. Utah has tried it, and it works. A Republican state has been successful in bringing the acute homeless off the street, homeless people. And they did it by paying for apartments to be rented for people who are homeless and who want to get on their feet again and have various kinds of support systems like healthcare and anti-alcoholism and drug treatment, and also get them in job training. But the whole thing, the idea in Utah is get them in a home first, in an apartment building itself. So family is secure, so as a single person, they can get trained and get back on their feet again. That kind of thing should be applied throughout the United States, so we wouldn't have this problem of whether it's going to be migrants or people in homeless condition. We won't have that shortage problem.
Yeah, just finally, one thing that you mentioned, and you know, I'm not saying it finally because it's the least significant topic we're discussing, but the healthcare system in the United States, for those that haven't lived there or know people that live there, it's a very difficult path to navigate, isn't it?
It's a horrible path. It's so inadequate. I mean, 30 million of our people in the United States are not covered with any kind of health insurance because our health insurance system is tied to employment. And only 51% are getting their health care from employers. The rest of them have a hodgepodge public and private system, and many are left out, as you can see. And then you have co-payments and deductibles. Deductibles can really knock someone's financial situation off their feet. I had a friend who had to have a roof repaired. His family had to have their roof repaired because it was leaking. And on the other hand, the mom came down with cancer. Her co-payment was like $20,000 or $30,000, even though she had insurance. And that kept them from getting their roof repaired for many, many months. It was a terrible situation that no one should face.
Oh, absolutely. Peter, it's always good to chat. We'll no doubt have plenty more to discuss next week with our Prime Minister heading to the United States today.
That'll be very interesting. Thank you, Tim.